Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Photography Tips and Tricks, your show for gear, tips, inspiration, anything you need to get your photography to the next level. My name is RC, and this week we have the inimitable Mr. Pete Collins. What's going on, Pete? How are you? Doing all right, man. Doing all right. It's good to see you. Good to see you. So Pete took a break from the Photoshop set and came over here and wanted to talk to us about triggering systems in Flash. So here's the deal. When you work with off-camera Flash, a lot of the times you have to have it off. You have to have it off the camera. So when you do that, you insert a whole bunch of other different types of problems to it, right? So you get the light off, but then you have to figure out how to be able to trigger from your camera onto this. Now, we get a lot of questions on off-camera Flash here at Photography Tips and Tricks, and what we wanted to do is kind of start a conversation with it. Start you from the very, very beginning and go, this is the first thing that you need to think about, and then kind of move out from there, how to use the Flash or work with the Flash. So Pete came up and he was just like, how about we just talk about triggers and just a little bit, just an overview on triggers. We'll dive in a little bit more, but some basic questions that...
The whole idea of getting started.
Right.
Because I remember when I bought into the idea of, boy, I want to get the Flash off the camera to get different looks, a better lighting setup, I was like, cool, I have a Flash. And I took it and stuck it on a stand, and then I stood there and went, okay, now what do I do? I was like, son of a gun, something else has to be in this equation.
Right.
And this is where you find most people get stuck. It's like, where do we go from here?
Okay.
And so I've got some tips, some questions, some other things to show you to help you kind of make an educated guess or decision about what kind of triggering system you want. Usually the first thing that happens, if we go to the first slide, is you think about, hey, let's try optical flashes, optical triggers. And so as you see on this picture up here, I've got in studio, I've got a camera, and I've got a flash over on the left with an umbrella and a softbox on the right. And the great thing about optical triggers is most flashes, if you come in, will have an optical slave sensor in there that can pick up when a flash goes off, and it immediately fires a flash as well. That's very handy, it's very easy, and it makes a lot of sense. If I fire my flash off of my camera here, it's gonna trigger any flashes around that are ready to receive that flash, and they're gonna shoot out a flash as well. You might go, well, wait a minute, won't that be slow? Well, no, the thing is, they travel so fast, it happens so fast, it's almost instantaneous. So it's a great system to have. If we go back to that optical slide, you'll see there's some pros and cons to it. The pros are that it's usually cheap. If you have a flash, it's probably ready already, unless it's been built earlier on. But now most of them have optical slave functions in them. Even if they don't, you can get cheap little optical slave units from places like Flash Zebra to put on your old flashes, something like this, that can then be optical slaves as well. Going back to the slide, you'll see that there is a con to it, that it has to be line of sight. And if you look to the softbox on the right, if you have to put your flash in a softbox, it probably won't be triggered by the flash because it can't see the other flash going off. And so there is some problems that you always have to set up your flashes so that they can see the initial flash to be triggered. So that's fine in a studio setup or when you've only got a couple flashes, but when you start adding them and putting things in the way, a lot of times you have to get very creative to make sure that everything can see the flash. And then you've also got to decide, am I going to trigger the flash with the camera on flash, or if I'm going to use a secondary flash to bounce it off other things. So there's some pros and cons to that. The next thing that a lot of people get into is the wired triggers. And that would be something like, I've got this over here where it's plugged in and it sets up and it just runs the cable from the flash to your camera. This one, obviously, one of the cons is your cables get kinked up, they're bulky, and they can only go so far, but you can simply attach this to your camera, and when you fire, every time you fire, it sends a signal down the wire to the flash to trigger. And that's great because you can do things such as TTL or through the lens evaluation of the flash, which we'll talk about at another time, but it's got some great options to it. The cons to it, if we go back, is that it can only go so far. You're limited by your length. It can add bulk to it. And if you're using it a lot, those wires, the ports where they plug in, can wear out. And so it's definitely got a great prospect to it if you're going to be in a studio setting, a limited setting where you're going to be able to control everything, because it is very consistent. It's not going to mess up most of the time. Then the third one, and the one that there's a lot of debate about what system and all, is going to be wireless. And the great thing about wireless is it no longer needs line of sight. It can use that softbox on the right because it's sending a signal out to it, and you can place flashes anywhere you want and a long way away as well. So the pros are that it can go anywhere, and it also looks more professional than if you're dragging wires around and doing all this other kind of stuff. It seems to be a little bit more professional looking. However, there are some cons to it, and one of the first ones is expense. You tend to spend more to get more consistency and more functionality. So you're going to have to decide how much you want to spend to do that. Then there's also the whole idea that you're going to have to decide how many of these I need, because you're going to need one for every flash you have. If you've got 4 or 5 flashes, you're going to have a trigger, and you're also going to have the receiver to go with each one of these. That can build up pretty quickly. Let's jump back over to that slide real quick for one more thing. You're going to want to realize that if you're not that technical, you might want to go with a simpler system. You also might want to realize that if you're buying one certain brand and your friends buy one certain brand, you can get interference. There's a technical level to this that's not with the wired and the optical. But here's some questions for you when you're trying to decide, do I go optical, do I go wired, or do I go wireless? These are the questions you need to ask yourself. What is your budget? Are you looking just to do things on the cheap and figure things out, or are you trying to invest in your future? And that's usually answered by the next question, which is, what is your goal with your photography? Are you just having fun and this a hobby and you're just doing it for kicks and giggles? Or are you trying to work to become a semi-professional or professional photographer, and this is part of the business you want to go into? Also, who are your clients? Are you doing it for yourself, for your family or friends? Or are you trying to work on getting paid gigs where you actually have paying clients? And then the question is, where will you be shooting? Are you only going to be shooting at your house or in a studio where you can control all the environment? Or are you going to be shooting anywhere? And then finally, what is your tech level? Are you a Luddite and prove that I am a Luddite, I even misspelled the word Luddite? Or are you technically savvy like an engineer? Because let's face it, there are a lot of buttons, there are a lot of things that you have to do to program some of these to get them to work. And so that needs to factor into how well you do. Because sometimes we think, oh, the most technical is for us, but if you don't know how to work it or it frustrates you, you'll leave it in your bag and it won't become part of your creative toolbox right there. So think about those things. Finally, let's get to the last slide that really kind of sums it up. As soon as you think you're going to be shooting outside of a controlled environment such as your house or a studio, the first 2 options start to lose some of their luster because their cons start to weigh more heavily. Line of sight can be a problem, or other flashes can trigger your flashes, and so therefore you lose a lot of consistency. Imagine going to a sporting game and all of a sudden your flash is going off all the time. That's not what you want. Wired, you can't get as far as you need to a lot of times. And so that's why you'll see most professionals or most advanced amateurs will start to go wireless. And so then when you're thinking about that system, you need to ask these last important questions about which one is it for you. You want to know, where am I going to shoot and what am I going to shoot? If I'm going out shooting with my friends and having fun, I can go with a cheap and cheerful set of wireless triggers. If I'm going to be shooting for clients, or am I going to be doing things that I have to go with more consistency, I might need to pay for something more expensive. Here's the thing. Some of these triggers that you can get online are very cheap, and they work great 80% of the time. But then there are other triggers that will work most of the time, but they tend to be more expensive. Do you need it to be cheap, or do you need it to be consistent? It depends on what kind of shooting you're doing and how critical it is that that flash works every time. Finally, a couple last questions for you are, can I build upon the system as I grow? I bought a lot of little optical things when I first started out, then wired, and all these things I started to use, but as soon as I went to the next level, I had to put them aside. I thought I was being cheap and frugal, but I ended up spending more money building up that I can't use now than if I had started slowly, invested in something that I could then add another one, and another one, and another one. So keep that in mind when you're buying your wireless set, if you want to go in that direction. And finally, the last question is, do I need all the functions? Some people love to shoot TTL, and like I said, that's going to be another thing that we can talk about. There's some great classes on Kelby One that talk about all that stuff. Other folks like to shoot straight manual. This is just a straight flash that I set for a certain level, and I just trigger it to fire off the same every time. Therefore, I might not need all the bells and whistles of some of these more advanced wireless triggers if that's the way I'm going to shoot. You really need to know your style, what you're going to be doing, how you're going to need it, because you may be able to save some money by not getting all the functions and only getting the functions you need. So that's a lot to process, but if you'll go back and look at these questions and start asking yourself, what am I going to be doing with this? What do I need and where do I want to go? It will help you kind of narrow down what your range is for the type of trigger you need. Well, that's a lot of information. Like I said, if you want more information about shooting off-camera flash, make sure to go check out kelby1.com. We've got a lot of off-camera flash classes over there for you. But right now, let's digest all that, take a break, and we'll be back with Mr. RC with more stuff for you.
MPix Pro, the full-service online photography lab, helping you grow your business with pro-quality photo products and stellar services. Get started at mpixpro.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to Photography Tips and Tricks RC here. Now, I want to take you down a road here for my Facebook page. So facebook.com/AboutRC. Obviously, we have one on Kelby One Online. I'm going to share that one in a second. But I like to kind of come in here, and every single time I check to see if we can help anybody with any kind of work that we're doing, right? So I also check my messages for most of this stuff. Now, Jason Reese, right, had a question, and I'm just going to try to see if I can bring him up here because I do want to show him. There's Jason. Hi, Jason. Glad you were watching. I'm going to pull this up, and he had a question on Lightroom. And basically, this is the way it went. He said he imported some stuff into Lightroom, and then he has no idea where all of that stuff is, right? He's trying to find all of the files because he wants to back them up and he wants to do something. And he sees the all photographs, right? He sees all of this section here, but he doesn't really know where it is, and he doesn't really know how to look for it. So the easiest way for you to do this is this way. Highlight a picture, any picture that you're working with here. Once you have the picture highlighted, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to select Go to Folder in Library. Right? That will bring you to the actual folder where all of that stuff is stored, and you'll see that here on the left-hand side, there it is. Oh, there's my daughter. Right? There's that one section, right? So there's the folder itself. And if you scroll up, as you're scrolling up, you'll see that that folder is a part of a parent. Now, obviously, I have a lot of stuff here, so this looks like it's part of the desktop. All I would have to do then at that point is just go, all right, well, that's where the folder is. It's over on the desktop. Go find it. Now, here's a problem. That folder does not exist on the desktop. Right? That could happen sometimes, right? Because you copy images over, you put them into a specific area, and now you're like, well, it said that it was in the desktop, but it's not there. Now, the reason that it's not there is because I've moved this already to my removable drive. So all of the images, whenever I work with the images, I put the images on my desktop and I do all of my pruning, and then once all the pruning is done, I move them over to the removable drive, and there will be times every now and again that you'll see that error. So this is kind of taking it past his tip, right? So he wanted to find out how to do it. Right click, go to folder location, there it is. But if you can't find it and it's on a removable drive, how do you link those two together? Right? I'm gonna go back over here, go back to the folder. I know that there's errors because it sees these exclamation points. So I'm gonna do is right click, I'm gonna select find missing folder. Now, once I do that, I can just go over here and it says Sabine and WWPW. So all I have to do is just go into here and find that. Now, if I can't find it in this one folder, I'll just go and take a look. So now you'll see that I'm looking for this one removable drive, nothing there. Problem. Dun, dun, dun. Or is it? So look, I've picked up some of the other removable drives that I carry, and I usually carry these 3 drives with me, right? So these are G-Tech drives, right? G Drive Minis, and 2 of them hold my images that I have for this year as I've been working this year. And then if one of them gets filled up, I move to the next one. One of them gets filled up, I move to the next one. So I try to carry a year's worth of images on me all the time. So if it's not on that drive, what I'm going to do is right from this one section, take a look. I'll just disconnect, then I'll move my cable to the next drive, pick it up. It'll go ahead and it'll power back on. I know exactly what I'm looking for because I'm staring right at it right here. So I just type in Sabine, come down here, there's the file, click on choose. Now, automatically linked. All of the files are there. So now at any point in time, whenever I want to work with this, right, I can leave it disconnected and I can go ahead and I can work, do rank, sort, pick, flagging, and things like that, things that go into the database. But if I need to access that or do something on the develop module, all I have to do is plug in the associated drive. If I don't know what it is, the same thing that we did with Reese. Just right click, scroll to that one section, there's the folder, and tells you exactly where it is on what drive. There's the drive. Easy to be able to find. A lot, but still easy to find. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the website to watch. The website that you want to take a look at is Tim Tatter. Tim Tatter is an amazing advertising, kind of dealing in the world of sports photography. He's a really, really good person to follow in the advertising and the sports world, and his images are just absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. So make sure you take a look at that at timtatter.com. Now, contest time. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about the PeachBit ebook deal. Now, you're going to get 40% off of this ebook deal's run and gun lighting resource. So this is a one-light solution for commercial and portrait photographers, and you can get this book 40% off of the ebook. All you have to do is just go to peachbit.com/Kelby1 and enter in the code. You get 40% off. Pretty easy, right? So Nick Fanchard wrote a great book here. Just go to kelby1.com, enter in the code, Kelby1, you can get that book. Now, contest time. We've got Rogue Flash Gels. We've got On Sports Photography by Mr. Peter Reed Miller. 2 prizes. All you have to do is go to this episode. So go to the webcast section, go to Photography Tips and Tricks. Inside of there, you want to go to the individual episode. So this is showing you episode 67. We're going to be looking at episode 68. Go to episode 68, click on episode 68, go all the way down to the bottom, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you want to see. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us what you want to see more of. This is your show. We want to be able to help you. That's it. Easy enough. Now, for more information on the kinds of stuff that we're doing, I remember I told you about the Kelby1 thing. I want you to go to facebook.com/Kelby1 online. This is a great place for you to go and connect with us, right? So anything you want to see, you can see there at facebook.com/Kelby1 online. If you want to leave me any comments on things you want to see for the show, all you got to do is just go to facebook.com/aboutrc and answer any questions. Happy to help, whatever it is that we can do to help. So that's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week here on Photography Tips and Tricks. Take care.